Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. It looks like we have a pretty solid group. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bree Sione, and I'm the Vice President of Development and Strategic Partnerships for Ronald McDonald House Charities Bay Area. Thank you for joining us tonight, spending your Friday evening with us. And also wanted to thank you for being at home and not being out and about, and for wearing your mask. In fact, all of the precautions that we're all taking right now in staying home and not going to school and wearing a mask is doing a great deal to keep the immunosuppressed and ill children that we serve at our houses and our programs and our locations here in the Bay Area and in the over 365 Ronald McDonald House chapters worldwide safe during this global pandemic. So I just wanted to thank you all for doing that. I know we would rather be doing something else on a Friday night, but I do appreciate all that you're doing to keep your family and our families safe. And that's why we're here, right? We're here to talk about this new world we're in of distance learning and to learn from the expert. I'm actually not the expert that's going to talk about that, but we'll get there. So one thing that, besides all of these really funny memes that distance learning and homeschooling has caused is anxiety, stress, and fear. And one thing that might not be apparent to everybody why Ronald McDonald House staff are the right people to talk about this is because what we do 365 days a year is help families in crisis and work with families in crisis and medical crisis, families who have their worlds turned upside down. And if you all haven't noticed, or maybe you haven't thought about it this way, your family is in crisis. Maybe you're not in medical crisis, although some of you might be. Your family is in crisis. And we can think about, oh no, well, the world's in crisis and we have this pandemic and our neighbors are in crisis and our schools are in crisis, but no, your family as a family unit is in crisis, very much the same way the families that come to Ronald McDonald House are in crisis. And so that's why we feel we have learned so much over the years about how to support families who have abruptly had to change the way they live, where they live, how they source their groceries, being underemployed or unemployed, having to take their children out of their traditional classrooms or school environments and adapting to that. And so, although at first, I think when things changed at the end of the last school year, we all thought it was really funny and we're like, we're homeschooling, it's the world's longest summer. And now things have settled in and the reality has set in and it's stressful. So that's what we're here to talk about today. One thing I wanted to mention before we get started is to show a little bit of the depth and breadth of the participants today on the call. Some of you have sent in the survey that we sent out about what you were interested in learning. And I just thought it would be interesting in terms of context to know sort of who's on the call. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end. So just so you know who your other folks are on the call and maybe some of the questions they might ask. We have the vast majority of parents on the call are elementary school, parents that have elementary school child, or at least one elementary school child. And something that I thought was really, really interesting to me is that, only 30% of the families that are participating don't have enough devices to go around for all their children to have one at the same time. And I know that's a huge concern for parents and schools too. We're trying to figure out how to do all of this. So I'm sure that's something that will come up in the Q&A as well. And for those of you who don't know, our location in Palo Alto that serves Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford, actually has a classroom on site. It's a kindergarten through 12th grade classroom. And it's a great partnership between Palo Alto Unified School District, Ronald McDonald House, and Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. As far as I know, it's the only partnership like it in the world. It's something we're really proud of. Been around for about 7 years. And what we've learned, this program too has had to go virtual and distance learning. And what we've learned from this program and bringing kids from all over the state, from other states coming together, being very sort of transient, coming in and out, having to liaise with their home schools and dealing with, the anxieties of coming and going. We have some pieces of advice for all of you that we've learned from working with these students over the years that we think's been really helpful. And take it for what it's worth. Every family and every child and every situation is different, but these are some of the common themes that we've seen across families, across demographics, across situations, across the years that sort of stand up the test of time in the situations. So one of the things, and this has really been hard for me as a parent, I have a first grader, is letting your child's joyful back to school excitement be your guiding emotion. Kids are conditioned this time of year to want to go back to school. They're excited about buying new clothes and getting their back to school supplies. And I personally refuse to buy shoes because my kid grows so fast and she will be living in flip-flops until she actually has to go back to school, because why? But instead of being super stressed out, me, mom, I'm trying to take this advice because I know from our teacher at school that this is true. For kids, for the most part, especially the young ones, they're really excited to go back to school. They're sad that it's not the same way, but they're still excited to see their friends over video, and they're excited to talk about their summer. And Izzy's excited to show that she lost 2 teeth. And I'm not helping her by being all stressed out about it. And so I am trying to take this advice and follow her lead and fake it till I make it, y'all. I live by this advice. But when the teacher at Ronald McDonald House School and I were talking about this the other day, this I think is something as parents we have a really hard time doing right now because we've been stressing about this all summer. So we're going to fake it during the day, and when the kids go to sleep, we're going to cry on our margaritas. That's how this is going to go down. We're going to try our best. And, when they have hard days, we're going to need to be strong for them. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best. And hopefully you will try to. The second piece that we've learned over the years through our school is when you let your kids know that you think they're capable of doing the work themselves, they will. And what is so weird about having kids distance learn is they're in their house, right? They're under your feet, they're in your sight line, you can hear them all day long. When they're at school, they get to be themselves, they get to be who they want to be, they get to be free, and they listen to their teacher. The kids always behave better at school than they do at home, right? And that is a totally different dynamic than having them at home. And so one of the challenges, I think, for us as parents in this scenario is to fight the desire to be like helicopter moms and dads and being over their shoulder and making sure they're doing everything all the time. The message that we should be trying to send is, I believe you can do this because they do it at school on their own. So do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it's hard. I sit across the room from my little one. And it's very easy for her. She's in a Spanish immersion class. And last year she would turn around, she's like, Mama, what's the verb for to plant? And I'm like, sembrar. And then I go back to my Zoom. That's not helping anybody. So she has to learn to do it on her own. And I have to fight the urge to help her because she needs to know that I believe that she can do that. And in a world right now where kids have so little control and freedom, school and learning and taking ownership of their learning is the one place where they can do that. And that is a direct corollary that we see in the work we do at Ronald McDonald House, because when you're a kid and you're sick, you lose that freedom to be with your friends and to live sort of a normal life. And so having power over things like your learning and having that responsibility is a really empowering thing. And we see that with kids at Ronald McDonald House all the time. And so that's something I think is really transferable to the situation we're in right now with distance learning. So think about that a little bit. And sort of the parenting tip on this is, don't you have your own Zoom call, Mom? And the truth is, Parents, most of us are working from home, or even if we're not working from home, there's other things. If we're stay-at-home parents, our days are full, right? We have other things to do, trying our best to give them the space they need to do what they need to do. And when it's homework time, that's when we come into the picture, just like we did during traditional school. Our third and final tip is creating a space for learning. This is a space for them to go to. It's part of creating, and Dr. Hernandez is going to talk about this a little bit later on, is somewhere to go to during the day. It doesn't have to be the same space every day. It just has to signal to them it's time to buckle down and get to work. For a lot of these schools, we don't know. Some kids are going to do it in the morning. Some kids are going to have their online time in the afternoon. They're going to be working independently. It's having a space to go to. And this second part's particularly hard for me, is letting them make it their own. Like right now, I have a Little Mermaid Lego set on the desk and some slime, and it's an eyesore, and it's ugly, and I have to look at it all day, and it's irritating to me. But you know what? Like, it's fine. Like, it makes her excited. That's her desk. That's her domain. That's where she's going to study. We can roll with this, right? And this is really important because, again, when kids go to school, they go to a place that they feel is theirs and different from what mom and dad do and want, and a place where they can express themselves differently than they do at home. And so it's sort of trying to take that same idea and allowing them to have a little bit of freedom in that space at home. So the parenting go-to here, the parenting tip on this is close those Pinterest boards. You can do it. Not saying it can't be cute. You guys are very talented. I've seen what you've done. But allowing them to put their personal touches. And finally, this is like, I'll probably cry while I read this, because it's like my favorite thing in the whole world. Every morning when school was in session in person at Ronald McDonald House, our teacher gets all the kids together, and they're all different ages, and they sit in a circle and they say the creed. And this was something that was written when the school started. And they say, "We are the Ronald McDonald House School. There is no other school like us, and we are so glad you are here. We focus on what is truly important, being the best school we can be to help each other during this time. We are committed to support and strengthen each other. We are kind and rise to life's challenges while practicing patience, perseverance, gratitude, generosity, and joy." Like, whew. And knowing that these kids come from all over the place, they're sick or they have sick siblings. Like, I think it's a really sweet thing, but it's a thing that also helps center them. And it's a routine that gets them in the learning mode for the day. Like, regardless of what's going on in the rest of the world, the rest of the house, and the rest of this crazy pandemic, like, now it's time to learn. And I love this little trick. And this is something that we want to sort of challenge each of you to do with your own family. So the creed should be posted in the learning space. So wherever that happens in your house, so you would want to write it with your family, post it in the space where your kids will be studying, or multiple copies if you have kids studying in different places, and recite that creed either as a family or individually before school begins each day. And it's a way to sort of like break that homeschool, paradigm. And we, as your partners in this brave new world, would like to challenge you all to write your creed, post it, take a family photo of it, and post it on your social media, tag us, use the hashtags here on the presentation, RMHC Bay Area and back to school, and then we will repost and some of our favorites. And I think this will be a really great way to share community and help other families think about how to start their days right and kind of get everybody in the right headspace to learn. And I want to finish my part by sharing some great images that I crowdsourced from friends of mine. And it shows how each family does the very best they can with what they have, and that everybody just tries to make things work. It doesn't have to be pretty special spaces. It's just about creating something that is well lit and comfortable and adequate for your kiddos to study. We have Olivia using pencil and paper. We have a group of different age grades sitting around a dining room table. We have a kiddo on a laptop. We have Alyssa in her bedroom. We have DJ and Allie in the guest room, kind of sprawled out. We have an example of another parent who converted a guest room into a schoolhouse. And then we have kindergartners who don't like to sit in their chairs. I mean, this is just kind of the way it goes. And this is my favorite slide because these guys are clearly living their best lives. You know, no one expects kids to be at home and sit nicely at their table all day long. Like Angelo wants to wear his green fro and his party hat and lay on the floor and Zoom, and so that's what he's going to do. And Rubens, who is always living his best life with his turquoise laptop sitting on the back patio, steps away from the snacks is what needs to happen because his mom's a teacher and she needs to be teaching all day. And Connor just kind of had it, so he's hanging over the ottoman, eating cereal with his hands and hanging over his laptop. And that's okay too. It's okay for things not to look like what they look like in the classroom. Sometimes you just gotta go with the flow. So that is it for me. I'm gonna pass it over to my colleague, Dr. Martha Hernandez. And I'm going to give her the power. You should have it, Martha. You got that?
I think so. Thank you, Bree. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Martha Hernandez. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how you can help yourself as parents during distance learning in an effort to help your children cope during this time. Oh, all right. So a little bit about me, just so that you know who I am. I'm the Associate Director of Family Support Services, and I'll touch base on what FSS is. But I'm a clinical psychologist by trade. I have experience working with children and parents in a variety of different settings. I've worked both in school settings, home settings, hospital settings, inpatient, outpatient, as well as the Ronald McDonald House. And as Associate Director, I run the Family Support Services, or FSS, program on site. And so we provide ongoing support for individuals, families, and couples, as well as parent workshops, fun clubs. Fun clubs are really activities for kids. So if you're thinking that, what do I do with my children while they're at home? These are great activities for them throughout the day. We also have support groups and for parents as well, and we're available 24/7. And so we have a lot of other activities as well. And the really nice thing is we're able to provide this completely free of cost to our families at the Ronald McDonald House. And so you can see 5 of the trainees, they're all in doctoral programs and master's level programs as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the new norm that we are all living and managing, and some strategies on how you can manage as adults and as parents in order to then help your children manage their anxiety and their stressors with school. And then ultimately, I tried to put together a relatively comprehensive list of different tips and resources for each of you to be able to utilize. But I do want to preface that they're general. I think what will be helpful is to really take the information from today and think how you can be flexible and apply it to your own family. And so obviously that can take a little bit of time to really think through what your children are like, what your space looks like, and I'll try to give examples of different ways to manage that. So we know that the new norm with COVID has us really all over the place. And so some of us might be working from home, if we're lucky. Some of us have to go into the office, and maybe we see that as lucky too. While some of us have our children at home all day. I did see that some from the call have a hybrid learning system. And so that comes with its own stressors if we're sending our kids to school. Being away from our loved ones with social distancing and maybe not being able to be physically present. And this idea of taking extra safety precautions can be overwhelming. I think every time I walk out of my apartment, I have to think about where is my mask to make sure that I'm going out into the world. And so now at this time, going back to school and the idea of distance learning can be really overwhelming for some. And it brings a lot of different concerns. And I've also heard many parents express a certain level of gratitude in some ways. And so I want to be able to present both sides of that because I think it's equally important. So some of the concerns are worry, stress, and fears of how am I going to manage everything? How are my children going to do? There's a level of uncertainty that comes for us as adults. How long is this going to go on? Can I really stay at home for this long? Parents report a loss of personal space. So at least when you were going to school or work and sending the kids to school, there was a certain level of distance that you could get and get a little bit of a break. And so what we've found is that that's really healthy in many instances. And so now there's an increase in fighting or arguing amongst family members, as well as a loss of social interaction and feeling isolated or lonely. In addition to this, families are sharing that this has actually been a blessing in disguise in other ways. They've been able to spend more family time with their children, maybe with their partner that they wouldn't normally see. It's also forced them to slow down. And part of that has been then allowing them to create new hobbies. I don't know how many banana nut bread postings I must have seen on social media over the last couple of months or when things first started. And then this idea of, I think most everyone on the call is from the Bay Area with a couple of individuals from the Central Valley. And so we all know traffic can be a little burdensome at some point. So also decreased time in commuting, and that helps with finances and other things. And the idea of being able to be active. So if you tried to buy any exercise equipment in the last 4 months, it's been non-existent. So hopefully we all end up with 6 packs as we go through this. And so how do we cope with this new norm? And I want to read this quote. Self-care means giving yourself permission to pause. As parents of children with a critical illness, the idea of pausing is almost non-existent. While it sounds great in theory, we know that that's not always possible. Some of the scheduling is jam-packed with appointments, with school, medication regimens, siblings, and a million other things that we have to balance. And so this idea of self-care, while we'll talk about it, I do want you to be flexible in the way that you think of self-care and what that might look like for you. And so what we do know as we kind of go through that idea of self-care, I want you to think about your family as a system. And so the first time that something might have happened to your child or a diagnosis might have come along, that impacted everyone. You had a reaction, your child had a reaction. And so we know that when an event like COVID happens, it doesn't just impact you and it doesn't just impact your kids. It impacts the entire family. And so if your child isn't doing well, it's very possible that that will be felt throughout the family and vice versa. So if you're not feeling well, then your entire family might also feel that. And so why this happens, it's really because at the root of things is that anxiety is contagious. And so what do I mean by anxiety? Anxiety is really just a feeling. It can be worries, concerns, irritability. It really just means that in the moment when an event happens or there's a situation, we start feeling kind of stirred up or we start feeling some sort of way that we can't really describe. And so sometimes we are able to put emotions to it, and other times we just know that we are really angry and we went from 0 to 100 in 2.5 seconds. And during COVID, at least, we know that this is a time of uncertainty and emotions are really high. And so it might feel like you're struggling to balance everything, struggling to balance maybe keeping your own self-care, making sure that your kids are taken care of, making sure that they're online. Maybe you have multiple children, and how do you ensure that you're on the right Zoom link at the right time with the right teacher? And so when you're struggling to balance everything or feeling like you're barely able to balance everything, many times that creates a lot of insecurities in us as adults and fears. I'm a failure. Why can't I do this right? Oh my gosh, my boss is going to fire me. What am I going to do? I can't even get it right with my partner, right? And so we start having a lot of these thoughts in our mind that then impact our ability to be there for our kids. And so what we might do when we're really anxious or feeling this way is we might turn to others. So it happens all the time. You have an argument with your partner, and you might call your best friend and tell them all about what happened. Or you might go to the gym, which right now is closed, unfortunately. So we might turn to other things to help us calm our anxiety. Others of us, we might just turn away from people and shut them out. And so it's our way of protecting ourselves. And sometimes these coping mechanisms work and sometimes they don't. And so what I want to challenge each of you as adults and as parents is to really first take hold of what are those worries and concerns and insecurities that are coming up for you. Because that'll be the foundation for your own self-care. What are the things that you need to do, as well as be there for your kids? And so I wish that I could tell you that this was an easy journey to go through. And the reality is that it's not. We must go through the experience. It's the way of, if I were to give you an example, you can read all the books on parenting, but the second that you have a child, that's the best lesson, right? And so it's the same way. You can read all the books on coping mechanisms and it gives you some of the skills. And you also have to go through the experience to be able to get to the other side. And so I want you to know that it looks very different for everyone. Just because your neighbor might be making banana nut bread plus cookies and putting together goodie bags for all of her kids' friends, it's okay to not be doing that. And it's okay that maybe you send your child back to childcare if that's important to you. And that's going to keep your mental health okay as well. I think it's really figuring out what are your values and what do you hold most dear. And so I ask you to explore, what are your own personal values? Is it being respectful? Is it being kind? Is it being loving? Because part of also being these things to your children and your family, it's being them to yourself. And so how do we work through this? You want to first identify what is most important to you during, this upcoming year, because who knows how long this is going to be our new norm. And so maybe what's most important to you is having a healthy relationship with your child. And so we know that every relationship might look different for different people. And so how might you implement that? And so you'll want to look at, I think part of having a healthy relationship, and all the research shows, is being kind, flexible, and also firm. And that can be a really hard balance, especially after a long day at work, or feeling really irritated, or the kids have just jumped all over the house and spilled their milk and they're not doing their Zoom work, right? And so the first piece is really kind of identifying what is important to you and how would you want to respond in an ideal world. This does not mean it's easy. Trust me. And so think a little bit about what might make it difficult for you to follow through with being warm, kind, and firm. And that's just an example. So that's just my example. And so it can be when little Sarah calls you a bad parent, when Billy has a full-on tantrum and a meltdown, right? It might be that you just kind of had it. You tried to clear out space and that wasn't good enough, and somebody's upset and not happy about it, or your boss is trying to call you and get you to do something. And so those situations many times make it more difficult for us to get things done and also to follow through with the way we want to be. And so the biggest piece is tolerating whatever it is that makes it difficult. looking for ways that you're flexible and clear on your values so that you can follow those through. And so you might be asking, oh my gosh, I came to talk about meltdowns about my kids. The reality is that in order to be there for your kids, you also need to be in a very healthy space as well. And so I brought up the idea of self-care earlier. And self-care is really the ability to care for yourself in whatever way is most helpful for you. And so I personally really enjoy being outdoors, going for hikes and things of that sort, where others might want to sit and watch Netflix, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so know that right now it might look different than usual. I can't just go to the gym and I can't just go on my favorite hikes because they're overly populated. And so being really kind and gentle towards yourself during this process is going to be of the utmost importance. I think we are our biggest criticizers, and we tend to be really mean to ourselves and say things that we would never say to our kids. And so why do we say them to ourselves and not to our kids? There's a reason. Using and seeking out social support, we know that people do better with social support. And maybe asking your job and your work if they can help you out in some ways. Is there a little bit of flexibility? Are there things that are higher up on the priority list? Do you have to go in every day? Can you do work at odd hours given that you're working from home? So really asking what are some of the things that don't have to be as structured, and asking for flexibility. And lastly, obviously, asking for emotional support, finding someone that you can talk to, finding maybe a group. Those are all ways that are very helpful as well. And so now the big moment. So now that you've had a little bit of, an opportunity to think about what you can do for your own balance, how do you help your own child go through this time? And so you want to prepare yourself to be able to prepare your child. So those are a lot of questions that you want to look at. Are you yourself comfortable talking to your child about COVID? The reason for this is that kids are going to have a lot of questions about why they have to study from home. And obviously there's different ages. I tend to see this a lot more with the younger kids, maybe 4 to about 8, who don't fully grasp the idea. And I tend to share it in the way that, there's germs out there that are making people sick, and we need to keep everybody safe. And one way that we can keep people safe is by staying home. And it's a very simple way. There's a lot of books with cartoons and different animations for them to be able to watch. There's also videos online. Then asking yourself if you're up to date with how your child's school is going to be different this year. What does the hybrid learning look like? What are maybe some of the resources that schools are offering? I know that, at least in the Bay Area, some schools, and as well as the Central Valley, some schools are offering hotspots for Wi-Fi, as well as maybe at least an iPad or a laptop for children. So sometimes our own anxiety and fears get in the way of us asking. So I think that that's really important, because not everybody has the opportunity to have something for their kids to use. And so if you have 2 kids but only 1 laptop, that's a little bit of a struggle. So having that open communication with the teachers is going to be really, really important so that they can support you. You have to remember that teachers are also there to see your child grow, and that they're going through their own stressors as well. And so maybe asking family members or other friends if they can help in any way. Is there a laptop or an iPad that maybe they're not using that they'd be willing to share with? And then we'll talk a little bit of watching for changes in your child's behavior. I think this is a huge component, mostly because you're the expert in your child's behavior. So I want you to be able to notice any of these changes. And then lastly, again, ask for any additional support that you might need. And so these are just some of the behavioral changes that most of you are well aware and have probably experienced already over the summer. But we really want you to think about them as excess worrying, crying, irritability, and acting out. And so those can be things that they don't normally do. Maybe you see that they're having trouble concentrating or avoiding things that they used to enjoy doing before. And so part of avoiding things that they used to enjoy might have to do with COVID and not being able to be outdoors. So you want to kind of take that into account as well, but also encourage them to find alternatives. Are they kind of reporting body aches, stomach aches, not wanting to get online? Maybe you notice problems eating and sleeping, eating more, sleeping less. Those are all indications that there might be that your child might be struggling. And so what you want to do is, first and foremost, try to remain calm. I think especially if a kid's acting out or irritable, it's really easy to just want to yell and tell them to stop. And I challenge you to really take a deep breath and think about, what is my child trying to tell me right now? What do they need? Because most kids, it doesn't feel good to be in that state of chaos, not for you and not for them. And so you're going to want to be able to get an understanding of what's happening. Reassure them that they're safe, that any information that you give them is, try to be as truthful and appropriate as possible. We might not tell a 4-year-old that there's hundreds of thousands of people dying at this point, but we might tell them, it's making people sick and we need to be safe. So go wash your hands before dinner. And teach kids everyday actions to manage their own anxiety. So that might be mindfulness, emotion regulation skills, going outside and playing, telling them to go be active. And I have some tips later, but there are very low cost things that you can do at home that are actually absolutely free that I'll talk about. And let children try things for themselves. Bree mentioned this, even if they fail, that's okay. This is how they learn mastery and they learn the growth mindset. So you can tell them that they can try again, that they can work. I like how determined you were. I like that you pushed yourself through this. And so really kind of developing their own sense of mastery and ability to do these things for themselves. And asking for additional support, that would be, either with a school therapist or, FSS is available, but also just talking to your teacher and seeing what they might be seeing with your child online. Many of you brought up having siblings and having multiple kids. And so it's going to be very similar. First, take a second to think about what you're experiencing, and try to understand why they're fighting. Is it that they're just they're in close proximity, they're bored, they're hungry, their little sister really is annoying? So just trying to think about and put yourself in your children's shoes, and think about what's most important for you in that moment, and then proceed in a way that'll make you proud of the way that you responded. Easier said than done. And so here are some actual tangible tips that you can do. Setting up specific rules, putting them on the board, having, pieces of paper with these written out, setting boundaries. So whether they're physical boundaries, you see the books in the middle, we tend to use real physical boundaries. Kids love to create their own boundaries, forts with boxes, or towels, or whatever it might be. They can create their own space. And just remember, safety is important. Finding a space for each child if you have it. And that can be a closet space. That can be the corner of a room. That can be outside on a balcony. Really just finding a space that's theirs. Setting up behavioral charts are great. Those are those things of, if you make your bed, you get a sticker every day. And then including more breaks. So most of us, including myself, don't have the best attention span all the time. And so giving them breaks will also help. Setting up an if and then. So if you do this, then you can go outside and play. And it really is whatever works for your family. And that's the most important. You know your family and you know your kids best. And so be really creative and take what they give you to implement that. And so some of you asked about screen time. And so this gets a little dicey, especially with education being completely online. 18 months, this is all from Children's Hospital of Orange County, along with the American Academy of Pediatrics. And so 18 months or younger are not supposed to be on screen time at all. That's the recommendation. And so this doesn't mean you're a terrible parent because you let your kid play with your phone. It's just the general recommendation. If they're in preschool, so this is about 4 or 5, and younger, less than an hour. And so we know that this might be a little bit difficult with schooling. So you want to ask the teacher, what are the things that they might be doing? Are they giving extra breaks? And then for 6 years old and older, they really kind of recommend that it's okay for them to be on screen time as long as it's structured and it's consistent. So they can go through their day at school, but with frequent breaks. And so not all screen time is created equal. So you want to think about family time versus learning versus video games. So if it's learning opportunities, that's quality video time or screen time versus maybe video games are not as quality oriented. And so that gets saved until the weekend or at the very night. Create screen-free zones in your house. So that can be the bedroom, maybe during meals, making sure that those rules are very clear but consistent. It doesn't matter. If you want screen time at the dinner table, that's fine. But you can't pick today and then take it away tomorrow. That really confuses children tremendously. So whatever you choose, it just has to be consistent. And then shutting off screens an hour before bed allows for their brains to reset and calm down and get more restful sleep, as well as finding an off-on screen balance. So we know that children run and play, and that's how they learn many times. And so you can grab a towel that's in your house and then create obstacle courses. You can try to find things, grab Tupperware and give them spoons so that they can make their own drum set. And so, oh no, there it is. So these are very general, and Bree went over many of them, but give your child their space. No matter how small it is, minimize distractions when possible, but also, if your kid really likes music while they're studying, it's not a battle that I want to fight. As long as they're able to concentrate and do work, a lot of kids actually do better with music. Giving them breaks, creating a schedule that has structure, but also flexibility. Like if your kid needs 10 minutes, let them have 10 minutes and then let them come back. Behavioral, reinforcement helps as well. So reinforcing the positive things that they do. And I know that many times we say, but that's the basic thing. They should be doing their work. Why should I praise them for that? Well, it's really reinforcing when they hear that they're doing a good job. So we want to be able to do that. Turn off the Wi-Fi if you've already downloaded whatever assignments they have and they're not going back online to help minimize some of those distractions. Use calendars, stickers, visuals. I know Bree said let go of Pinterest, but if you love Pinterest, go for it. Kitchen timers help, giving warnings between transitions. You have 10 minutes of play and then it's back to come in. Think about the bell at recess time. It tells them that they have to come back in. And then allow breaks. If they want to study while they're standing up, let them stand up. If they want to study while they're doing cartwheels, let them study while they're doing cartwheels. There really is a little bit of flexibility while they're still getting things done. Now, if they're not getting things done, it's a whole different story. Let them walk, run, jump, hopscotch dance, get really creative, and find ways to have those play dates, whether it's online or maybe at the park, but with masks and they're away, but they get to at least see each other and have lunch with their friend or a picnic. And also ask your school for flexibility. They're going through it as well and kind of suffering and making plans the way that the rest of us are. And so slow yourself down first, know what your values are and what's important to you, and allow these values to then lead you on how you want to parent and set that structure and flexibility. And know that your feelings are valid, your child's feelings are valid, and that it's going to look different for every person. So feel free to ask for help and you don't have to go through it alone. So here are some different resources, and we'll get those to you as well. And then obviously if you want to get in touch with us, Bree, can you help me on your end? My contact information will be on here as well. So just know that we also offer all of our services online, and they're free for our RMH families as well.
There we go.
Thank you. And that's
your part. Great. So thank you, Dr. Hernandez. So we're going to take Q&A here in a moment. I want to go ahead and I have to go back, actually. Martha, can you stop share? Let's see. I think we should be... No?
Yeah, you stop sharing. It's just the two of us.
Okay. So I do want to show the screen for a moment. All right, so real quickly before we go to the question and answer period, I do want to go through a couple quick announcements. You can go ahead and start typing in your question and answer. Avoid the chat, but if you can use the question and answer, we'll go for the time that we're able to. I just want to let everybody know we will also be sending a follow-up email with the recording of the session, so you will have links to all of the resources that Dr. Hernandez shared. You can also share it with your friends and colleagues if you wish. So please do so. That's why we put this together. I also wanted to encourage you all to stay involved. And if you love this, take our survey. So we're going to take that feedback to inform future sessions. We have a feeling that there's going to be more challenges ahead in terms of dealing with this situation of families in crisis all over the place, and how some of our experiences working with families in crisis can really help all of you manage and have better coping mechanisms and more peaceful family lives. So we're happy to share that with everyone. Please stay in touch with us. And also wanted to let you know that we also currently have a community challenge called Gift for Kids. Our board members raised amongst themselves and friends and family $500,000, and we're trying to get the community to match that because of COVID-19. We have a planned, an anticipated fundraising deficit of $1.3 million because of canceled events and other revenue that we anticipate not coming in because of the pandemic. So it's something that we're asking the community to contribute to. There is special information about that on our website, which is rmhcbayarea.org. And if you like what you saw today, you can just throw us some love, just because. We'd appreciate that. It supports families who need a lot of support now and always. I also wanted to turn your attention to, in the same vein, something that we're doing for families. It's a fundraising event, a cooking class called Lunchbox Lessons. It's like the cutest name, and I can never get it right. It's Friday night. Your girl Bree is tired. Which celebrity chef Tanya Holland, the owner of Brown Sugar Kitchen in Oakland. If you guys haven't been there, it's amazing. She is open for business for takeout if you are in the East Bay. And Tanya is going to put together a couple of menus to teach your kids how to make it without you, so they are self-sufficient, can make their own meal for themselves and for you. Once again, reinforcing that idea that they can take responsibility for themselves and contribute to the family during this time that we're all stuck inside. And, it's a great local business, Black-owned, women-owned, amazing food. She was on Top Chef. Look her up. She's fantastic. So we're holding this event in September. There's information about how to register. And we have about 50 or so chef kits for kids, which are really adorable. So please check that out. Kind of in the same vein, let's help our kids thrive during this time and learn more skills. And finally, please follow us on social media at RMHC Bay Area on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So we are now open for our question and answer period. Looks like we have a few. see. All right, I'm gonna just start with the first one. How do I deal with a toddler who is highly energetic during the same time I am helping out my second grader? Sometimes I lose my patience with the kids because at times both kids are in need of my attention and I am pulled in different directions.
Yeah, and so I'm going to try to answer this in twofold. I'm going to assume that there is someone else potentially in your household. So if there is, I would definitely ask for help and see if there's anyone that can negotiate that time with you or help. Obviously, that's not always available for all families. And I think that being able to have that talk with your second grader, because your toddler's not going to understand it, right? And so asking your second grader to also be patient with you and with the toddler will be great. Many times, if you're the only one at home, that can be very, very challenging. And so a lot of times is finding the 2 seconds, and I know there's all those memes of the kids finding you in the restroom as a parent, but trying to find those 2 seconds that'll help you in any which way that you can. So I think just navigating and talking more to your second grader that it's okay and that this may take a little bit of time, and if they can be patient. They tend to understand as long as you're giving them that information ahead of time.
Thank you, Martha. We'll go into our second question. How do you recommend we keep teens motivated and on task?
Creativity. Figure out what they're into and how they learn. So each of us learn differently. Some of us might like to read, some of us might like to write, some of us might want to hear things. So if it's exciting to them to have, those virtual backgrounds, let them have a virtual background. If it's more exciting for them to have their screen off, then let them have their screen off. And ask the teachers to have the same level of flexibility. I also think having small things that might be helpful at the end or enjoyable for them would also be very, very helpful as motivating. So can they pick their favorite dinner dish? Can they cook something with you? What are the things that they like? If it's video games, can they get, 15 or 20 minutes every day at the end? So I think it's that if you do this, then we'll do this, but also just giving them flexibility. If they want to have their headphones full blast while they're listening to things and studying, and they can get it done, that flexibility will keep them sane and keep you sane because you're not having to battle them while they're doing this. So creativity.
And then we have another question. I'm not sure that either one of us are going to be able to answer this, but the question is, how will high schools do the arts and ceramics classes with distance learning?
I think it's following up with your school. I think asking them directly. I know some schools are actually creating packages for their students that they're picking up once a week. And then there's other hybrid schools that are allowing for children to come in and use apparatuses at different scheduled times. So they might have to schedule in at 9 a.m. and then at 11 a.m. after they clean up. So that might be something. So I would definitely follow up with your school.
Yeah, excellent. We have another question. Any suggestions to get the teenager out of the room?
Oh man, I wish I had more information of what room and when. Usually you can't, out of their own room maybe?
I'm assuming.
Okay.
Sounds like it.
I think being able to think a little bit about why they're in the room, it's really natural for teenagers to be in their room anyhow. And so it might be having a rule that they have to come out for dinner.
Okay, so sorry, Martha, the person who asked the question, and we're getting some serious energy around this one, are clarifying their own room, out of their bed, and off of the computer all day long. We got like a very specific.
I don't think COVID related. I think that's teenager related in general. So obviously have a talk with them first, try to understand what's going on and reason with your teenager. They're adults or they're getting there. And so the best thing is to be able to treat them that way and negotiate. I tend to give kids 2 options. So you can come out and do this, or we can do this. Okay. But these are the two options that I've picked for you. And then if that tends to not necessarily work, or they're not getting their work done because they're just kind of messing around, then there's a little bit of what I call natural consequences. So you can come out, or you can take some time off of your screen time, or the Wi-Fi might get turned off, or we might change the password and you might not have it. So that everybody else can use it and we're not punishing everyone, right? So
savage.
But I think there's the three rules, and this works with younger kids too. You let them know what you expect of them very directly and concisely. The second piece would be that you say it and you let them know that there's going to be a consequence. And then the third one is it's a natural consequence because they've chosen to not follow the rules.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take this question. What are tips to reduce eye strain for children and adults working remotely and doing school? Well, I'm glad you asked. So these are blue light blockers. They come in lots of fun shapes. Actually, not only do adults use them, but I actually got a recommendation from school to try those, but also taking, as Martha was saying, and please chime in, Martha, about breaks, taking those breaks every 30 minutes, looking away from the screen, not extending your screen time to recreational time. But I do find that these do help. It doesn't magnify anything. It just helps with the blue light and the fatigue. So you don't need a prescription. I got these like online. They're super inexpensive. I don't know, Martha, if you want to add anything to that.
Those are the big tips. A lot of making sure, I would say even 20 minutes, depending on the age of your kid. And then having them blink frequently also tends to help, so that it's really out of dryness from your eye. And so allowing them to re-moisturize, and then looking away from your screen as often as possible. So we covered most of it.
What about like drops for little ones? Is that something that's recommended? Do you know, Martha? I don't
know, and I'm not.
Maybe consult with your doctor.
Yeah, that's probably a good.
Not that kind of doctor. Medical doctor. Our next question is, my 5th grader likes to eat her breakfast or snack while on Zoom calls, and I think it is disrespectful. Should this be under letting them have control? I guess I need to butt out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would say that their teacher probably lets them know if that's allowed or not. I mean, and it's also negotiating, right? So can she have her screen off during that time while she finishes eating, right? If that's going to save you an argument and kind of manage your own morning and not lose it on your other kids, yeah, I would let her have that one.
That's a really good point. Defer to the teacher, because again, at school, it would be the teacher that's in charge of that, right? So like, let the teacher have that parenting moment.
Natasha, I'm with you. I don't like people eating while I'm on a Zoom call, but you know.
Sorry, I always eat on the Zoom calls. I'm busy. All right, last call for questions. It looks like we're winding down. That was sort of the last one we had pop up. And while we're waiting, if any more pop up, I just want to say really quickly for those that are still on that we are doing this session in Spanish on August 25th. That's a Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. It'll be Dr. Hernandez and I, again, doing the same content in Spanish for families that prefer Spanish, to receive this type of information in Spanish. We're putting it up, if it's not already on our website. We'll also be promoting on social media. So those of you that are part of school communities, we would love for you to promote that with your school communities, with your friends and family, to have as many participants as possible. And it looks like that is it. We really want to thank you all for joining us. Oh, will the recording be shared with everyone? Yes. So we are going to, in Spanish. Yes. Laura, you can ping me. You know where to find me. I will send it to you. You can also always, I guess we could post it online, right, Caitlin? We could post a link probably on our website. Maybe we should do that.
Yes.
We'll do that. Thank you. voice of God, wherever that came from. That was Caitlin. Yeah, we will post the Spanish, the link to the Spanish presentation on our website so you guys can have access to it. Cool. All right, you all have a great evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.